Hi, I'm your host, Dave Kemp, and this is Future Ear Radio. Each episode, we're breaking down one new thing, one cool new finding that's happening in the world of hearables, the world of voice technology. How are these worlds starting to intersect? How are these worlds starting to collide? What cool things are going to come from this intersection of technology? Without further ado, let's get on with the show. All right, so I'm joined here today by Hunter McKinley of Yak. Hunter, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Hey, man, I'm glad to be here. Like you said, my name is Hunter McKinley. I am the CMO of Yak, which is the Chief Marketing Officer. So I do pretty much anything that you see public facing, whether that's obviously podcasts or blogs, social media. And I think you're most interested in AirPods App Store, which is what I recently came out with. Yak is basically Snapchat for businesses. When you're in a remote team, it's really hard to get on a Zoom call. You have to schedule, especially if there's different time zones. So we built an app where you can send a message sort of like Snapchat, and then the receiver can listen to it or reply at any time that they want to. And that's really powerful, especially, I was just talking to some guys over at Spotify. They said they have a team in Stockholm, in London, and New York City. Well, there's only about 3 hours of time where it works for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like 3 p.m. in the afternoon for him. And so that just doesn't really work, especially when you're trying to get decisions made. And that's what meetings are for. So then, you find that teams have these workarounds where they're having meetings before the meetings after the meetings. So we just cut out all the noise and you just send a quick voice message or screen message, and that's it.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And, for those that are listening, I've been playing around with a few of the different apps that they've made. So they made this one app, BRB, and it's, basically 30-second sound clips that you can send to one another. And it's fascinating to me because, I'm 30. Hunter, I think you're 24, right?
24, that's right.
And so, but it's cool because it's like I'm seeing now entrepreneurs that came up with a lot of the technology that was play toys, in college. So you mentioned Snapchat. This app, it's built with SnapKit, which is, their developer kit that you use to build the tool. And it's just really interesting to see the way that this wave of entrepreneurs is thinking about things where it's like, why don't we take some of the things that makes Snap really popular and convert it into, just like a subset of it. So to your point, I think like that's a really interesting point around with remote work. You have time zone differences and stuff like that. So rather than trying to constantly nail down a time to talk, it might make a whole lot more sense. I said in a tweet, it seemed a lot like Slack for voice messaging, but I think your point of it being like a Snap might even make more sense than that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We started BRB in basically a weekend. Product Hunt Makers Festival. We're really close to the guys at Product Hunt. Yak started from a Product Hunt Makers Festival. Actually, this time last year, we won the remote category. It was their very first one. So, last week, Snapchat was holding one. And we needed to build something. We have Yak already ready to go. And so we wanted to put something out into the marketplace and really help out and utilize SnapKit. We've never done that before. And so that's where BRB came out. We wanted to have the consumer play because we already have the enterprise. What's really cool about consumers, especially young kids, is that they're really into voice messages. I challenge you right now, if you were to go to Twitter and type in voice messages, you would see, especially girls, they love it because they love when their boyfriends send them voice messages. It's really funny to look at and read the comments, but it's catching on. In Latin America and in Asia, most people, like with their families, they speak to each other. They don't text each other. And that's something that's really unique to the United States, is that we like to text, but it's catching on. We were just in New York City not too long ago, and everybody has AirPods and everybody's voice messaging. So I think we're really hedging the company on everybody will be voice messaging, and if not us, then who?
That is really cool. And honestly, like for me, this touches on a big theme of everything that I've been writing about, podcasting about, which is like when we gradually move to this era where, call it voice first, call it the hearables era, audio first, whatever it is, I totally agree with you that you look at the way that the younger generations are using, like the way that they're messaging. it's a whole lot different than what I think people that are 30 and above are doing, which is traditional SMS text messaging. And I think, it's this idea of you take all the different use cases that the smartphone represents today. So messaging, for example, and you start to come up with how does that call it a job to be done, or how does that particular use case, how does it translate into this audio hearable voice first world, right? And I think that this is so interesting because I think you're right, where it's like I might be accustomed to sending messages right now, but I could totally see that within 2 to 3 years, it becomes the norm within subsets of the people that I message with. Maybe it's my friends initially, and then it evolves to be the way that I message with my family. But I could totally see that evolving into this idea where rather than just like texting, because again, there's more context that you can do in a voice message. You can convey sarcasm, right? Like you can convey things I think in a more efficient manner through your voice. And so it makes a ton of sense for me to, this idea of you're walking around with AirPods all the time, and, messaging evolves into this idea where you're just kind of relaying messages to and from each other. And I just think that's a really interesting idea. And obviously you guys are keen on this idea too, because you're building this actual idea out.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. When you put in the context of remote work, right? So if you're hedging your bets like we are, that the future of everything, whether it's consumer or enterprise, is going to be voice first. If you look at remote work, everything's text first, whether it's Slack or Skype or any of these, but they all fail, and that's very obvious. That's why you have Zoom. That's why you have, video conferencing. That's why these things exist, because to a certain point, text fails. And so the problem with that is, like, if you have part of your team, most teams are hybrid. So part of your team is remote, part of it's in person. So the problem is that if I have a conversation with my co-founder, Jordan, who's sitting right next to me, our entire remote team now loses out on that conversation. You can't search for it. No one knows what's happening. And so now I need to then have that conversation with him and then go back into Slack and then type it all up. Versus if I just could share that directly into Slack, which is actually hopefully coming out this week, then everybody's on the same page. And when I was talking to Zapier, one really big thing that they said was that they had what's called historical context. I was talking to their head of brand partnerships there, Emily, and she said that they had over 1,000 channels in Slack. And that's really important, because if a new person comes into the company, they're able to search and go back and see all the decisions that were being made without having to talk to somebody. Like, you're not saying the same thing 3 times. And so the way that we're thinking about it now is that if you're having every conversation, and every conversation that you have is recorded and transcribed, and it's all searchable within Slack, within Skype, then everybody has access to it. And what are the possibilities that are come out of that? So that's something that we're really excited about, is the byproducts of having everything that you're using with your voice recorded, transcribed, and then put somewhere that everybody has access to.
I think that's so genius. And I agree with you. I mean, I think that now we're really getting into this idea of, so you have all this information that's readily available. And I think the evolution of that could potentially be layering the voice assistant onto it, so that you have, it doesn't necessarily have to be, say, Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, like these top level master assistants, but you could envision, even having, sort of like a pseudo micro assistant that's affiliated to that Slack channel, so that, because just like you said, this all is being recorded, it's being transcribed, so that you can basically take that information and you can call it up intelligently. So you can say, just like you said, for a new employee, for example, give me, like, relay all of the conversations that were had that pertained to this client, or something like that, so that you're sort of taking a lot of that information that's already housed in there, and it might be stored in disparate areas. But I can kind of see how that evolves into a way where you're using your voice assistant to more or less retrieve and fetch a lot of that information. Again, if it's this scenario where a lot of this stuff, you might not even be in front of a screen. You might be out and about, and you still want to sort of get up to date with the information that you're currently digesting through a screen, through like the actual Slack interface. But if really all you're trying to do is get the information there that's like fed to you in some way or another, I could see how that kind of manifests in itself, where you're using the voice assistant as a way to sort of retrieve that information.
Yeah, we're actually thinking about that in a couple ways. But you already hit on one of them, which is we're calling it. I think we're calling it smart rollups. So
Hmm.
basically, if I have three meetings, quote unquote meetings, send three messages to three different people. Let's say my designer, my co-founder, and my developer. And I say to my designer, "Hey, I want you to do this." And I say to my developer, "Hey, I'm reporting this bug." And then to my co-founder, I said, "Hey, check out this proposal." Let's say at 11 a.m. when I'm done with all these, quote unquote meetings, I can get an email that ties directly into my task manager. And in our case, we use Asana. So it says, "Hey, I noticed that you mentioned to Jordan that you want him to look at the proposal. Would you like me to assign the task to him?" And it would be just one click. And that's something that, if I'm just having a conversation with him in office, that's not possible. But
Hmm.
as soon as you start to go remote first and use your voice and have it all transcribed, it unlocks this whole new set of opportunities. So that's the first thing. um, using AI and smart assistants, that's one way that we're looking at it. And the second way, which I'm even more excited about, we're looking to partner with Bose or Focals, is being able to go down the road and say, "Hey Siri, hey, Alexa, send a message to Dave," and then it
Hmm.
just does it. So now you're not even looking at your phone. You're not distracted off the road, because now that you have your AirPods, or in Bose's cases, the QC35s or the 700s,
Hmm.
you don't have to look at your phone. It's a heads up display almost. So those are the things that we're really excited about, because those are things that aren't really possible with face-to-face conversations. And with Zoom, obviously you can have it, recorded and transcribed, but it's just way too long. And that's the beauty of Slack or Yak, is that it's such short snippets. In voice messages, it's 30 seconds, and in screen recordings, it's 40 seconds. So because there's such short snippets, we're able to do a lot more things than other companies aren't able to.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So can you give me a couple examples, maybe like a power user of how people are using Yak today? Like give me an example of a specific, either a remote team, just a way in which you're like, that's interesting. Maybe you didn't even see that coming. Like, because I find that usually to be the most interesting stuff with startups is, it's like you kind of uh, you make a tool available and then your users run with it maybe in a direction that you didn't even really sort of see coming.
Yeah, that actually just happened this week. Typically, we see people in creative agencies
Mhm.
use Yak in ways where they don't have to go to the second floor. If they're working in different floors, they're a distributed company. If they work in different buildings, they don't want to walk over, especially developers. They like to stay at their desk and keep on task, and designers. So that's kind of been our main use case. However, just this past week, I was talking to a media agency, and they were using it to onboard their new freelancers, which is actually really cool, because before they said they were using Loom and it was kind of getting clunky and they had to download all these apps. They gave me a laundry list of apps that they've tried, and they all just sort of failed in some way. And what they really liked about Yak is because our desktop version hovers over screen at all times, so they can be showing their screen and sharing their screen to the person that they're sending it to, their freelancers, and their freelancers can then open it and then follow along screen too, because Yak is always on top. And so it kind of solves all the problems. You don't have to switch between tabs, and that's not something that we really thought about. We've onboarded using Zoom, Skype, Loom. We've never really thought to onboard freelancers using Yak. That's not something that we used it for. But now that I've spoken with this company, I mean, it makes total sense. You only have to download one app, and you can voice message, communicate, screen share. We've been talking to Upwork because they've been having the same problem, is that their messenger is clearly having problems.
Mhm.
So they want to have some way, and we've been talking with them and partnering in that way too, because with freelancers, it's just a kind of like a one-off deal. They're not typically You don't typically speak to them every single day all day long, where with a freelancer you talk to them every now and then. You want to share your screen, you want to onboard them. So that's just some really cool ways that we've seen people using it recently that we really didn't predict. That's not something that we've been using it for, so it's been really interesting to see how people are playing it out.
What's so interesting about that is that, I'm thinking about myself and I can't tell you how many times a day I'll get up and it's like you found this happy medium, which I've yet to really find, which is, I work at a small business, but I'll get up throughout the day. I'll carry my laptop. I have a Mac, and I'll just carry it over because I need to show somebody something on my screen. So I have really two options. I could send them a screenshot, and then I could describe in an email what I'm trying to communicate, or I could just get up and I could like walk over and be like, okay, so here's what I wanted to show you, and I could describe it to them, because like the picture isn't enough. And so this idea of being able to do a quick like 20-30 second screen recording where I can describe what I'm trying to do, that is really, really powerful. And I mean, I'm in a setting that is a small office where I can get up and move around quite easily. But like, so like, obviously it would be really beneficial if you're in a remote setting. But I do definitely see where you guys are really coming at this from an enterprise standpoint, which is, a lot of these tools already exist, but like, just like Zoom, for example, Zoom's great for certain things, but like when you really start to get into the subsets of like why, like different things that you'd want to, video conference and share screens and stuff like that, it really does make sense to have this like real micro oriented tool.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I mean, like I was telling you right before this, we started off as a creative agency. We've been a creative agency for almost 5 years now. And one of the hardest things to do, especially with designers and developers, is to share your screen easily that you can like track it. So we've tried everything from Jump Share to Loom. These things are awesome. Like we still use both of them, basically every day. But it just like you get to a certain point and it just fails. Like now to send you a screen share, now I am clicking a button, then I'm clicking another button to start recording, then I'm clicking another button, then I'm copying it, and then I'm pasting it into Slack.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's lost in Slack. So with Yak, the beauty is that it's always on screen. So we try to get it under 3 clicks. You have to open the app, click the person, send. That's what we're trying. That's the goal, is to get as few clicks to just send it, because otherwise you're just gonna get, like you say, get up with your laptop and go walk over. But now when a remote setting, everybody else on your team won't have access to that, won't see the decisions that are being made. So yeah, I agree with you. It's been an interesting shift in habits, because even though we're in office together, some of us are in office, some of us, like today, I'm working remote. It's an interesting shift to try to go remote first in everything, even if they're sitting next to you, trying to make that shift so that way everybody has access to it.
Yeah, no, that's really, really cool. So Hunter, as we wrap up here, why don't you share with the audience of, like where they can go to learn more about Yak, where they can follow you, just give everybody the rundown of how to learn more about you and your company.
Yeah, the cool thing about Yak right now is it's in closed beta. So if you go to yak.chat, so www.yak.chat, you can go to our website and sign up, but there's a referral. So if you just, put in a referral code, just say podcast, you'll get bumped all the way up the list. I think our list is almost 2,500 now. So you'll go from 2,500 all the way up to the top. I'll expedite you and you'll get an email from me, and you'll get a message from me right away. So that's the way that you can find out more about Yak. And if you'd like to follow me, everybody on our team is super heavy on Twitter. Like I was telling you right before this, we got funding off of Twitter. Our investors are all off of Twitter. Twitter's been really good to us. So that's the best way. So my name is at Hunter Moonshot. And then the company is just at Yak Chat.
Yeah, cool. Well, I will, it's like a nice kudos bonus to all the future ear listeners out there that, you get bumped up to the top of the line, if you want to go try out Yak. And just on the note about Twitter, I can't agree more. I mean, for people that have been following me for a little while, I've been very adamant that I think Twitter is like hands down the greatest networking tool on the planet. And I think it like is a little intimidating at first for people because it is a little bit hard to start, like curate a feed. But like once you get going, to your point, like, I mean, it can lead to a company getting funded because you made the right connection. It's truly an incredible tool.
Just like with Product Hunt, man, it's all about the community. Twitter is massive, but the communities within it are very, very tiny. We joined the remote community and the voice community, and we have never popped off more. I mean, the people are just so willing to help each other. And if you're into the hearables voice space, there's a couple people like Brett Andler, and like obviously yourself, Colin Bournes. These people are really leading the way and curating these lists. So if you can get involved in these lists and just leave comments, man, they are so willing to teach and give you advice. And that's how we've made all of this happen. We're actually raising our seed round now, again, based off of Twitter. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
That's so cool. All right, Hunter. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we'll chat with you next time. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Future Ear Radio. For more content like this, just head over to futureear.co, where you can read all the articles that I've been writing these past few years on the worlds of voice technology and hearables and how the two are beginning to intersect. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll chat with you next time.